welcome to the Giraffe Social Media Podcast. It's what social media managers are talking about. I'm Tyler, and today I'm joined by Laura and Chloe.
Hi.
Hello.
Coming up on this week's episode, we'll be discussing our top 3 social media trends that we're loving right now, social media tactics to avoid, along with the most recent news story of this week, which is Twitter's new e-commerce feature. Stick around to the end of the show where we'll be answering some of your burning DMs. So firstly, to kick it off, we're actually all in office today.
We're sitting next to one another.
Which is crazy. I mean, we've been recording podcasts for probably about 10 months or now. I don't know, a long time.
Yeah, I would say over a year.
Yeah, and it's been all digital, all kind of via a little video feed, but we're actually all sitting in person, which is insane. It feels weird.
It feels good.
Definitely. So to kick off this week's episode, we're just going to be chatting about some of the trends that we've kind of been seeing on social media at the moment and things that we've been loving. So why don't you guys kick it off? Laura, what trend have you been loving right now?
So my favourite, I don't know if it's a trend, but my favourite sort of thing on social at the moment is pet talk on TikTok because my TikTok feed is just full of animal content. So all the animals, all the cats, all the dogs, also some like whales and dolphins. I've been loving that content, like the underwater content where there's this guy, I don't know where he lives, but somewhere really exotic and lovely, and he has this really cute dog, and he goes out on a surfboard with a drone and he films like all these whales, dolphins, sea snakes, turtles, and I'm just absolutely obsessed with pet talk.
I think I have seen that guy. There's a video of him on a paddleboard and there's like a sea serpent like swimming up to him. I think he's Aussie, but yeah, I do love him. He's very wholesome.
Yes, yeah, because the sea snakes are normally, just interesting fact, they normally stay away from humans. But this in particular one, because it's mating season, came up to him on his paddleboard. So.
And he's surprisingly calm for
calm.
all the different types of sea creatures that are approaching him on this tiny little paddleboard. I'm not sure I'd be as brave as him, but
no,
I like watching from my phone across the world
from a distance.
That's nice. Yeah.
Me too. That's what I like.
Oh, I love that. Honestly, I think any sort of cute pet content is worthwhile.
For sure.
Honestly, definitely addictive.
The only TikTok I have is of my cat. And that would be the only TikTok I create.
It's the only TikTok you need to create. You don't need anything else. Oh, I love that. What about you, Chloe? What are you loving at the moment?
Yeah, I'm like similar kind of wholesome content, but kind of on the other side of the spectrum. I've been loving on Instagram. People have been posting a lot of like photo dumps, which if you don't know what those are, it's basically, you post on Instagram as a carousel and it's basically like a bunch of images maybe that you took over the weekend or on holiday, and they're really just like that authentic, shot in the moment, unedited, like an flat lay of your groceries, or like what you had for dinner, or like a picture of you and your friends. Like, it's just really nice to see people kind of moving away from that very like filtered, very posed kind of like content that we see on Instagram usually. And they're just a nice way to break up the feed. I know that in the influencer community, like filler photos have been very popular in the past, although they don't add a lot of like value to your feed, and they don't generally get a lot of engagement. They're just purely there to like make the feed look pretty in the grand scheme of things. So I think that these photo dumps are like a nice sub in for that filler content where it's still like really nice to look at, but it's a bit more value, especially for your friends and family that follow you, to kind of just see what you're up to instead of just like seeing posed photos that you've like carefully constructed in Facetune first or whatever. So yeah, that's what I've been loving.
Definitely. I can agree with that. I think it's definitely something, it's just like authentic, like you said, and it's just real. Like, I mean, I've never done a photo dump myself. I don't know if I ever would. But I love seeing other people's photo dumps and what they're up to.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely agree with you there. I think one thing that I've been loving recently is something called Clean Talk. And it's literally it's literally just watching people clean, and it's so satisfying. I can't honestly describe the affinity to it. I don't know why. I've been loving it so much.
Or like organizing talk, like people
Yes.
organizing their fridge.
Yes. Oh, love
it
it.
just does something to me.
Just so satisfying. We love to see that type of content.
There's just something about watching someone clean their bathroom or clean their kitchen. It's
Especially
just
the
really
before and
satisfying.
after.
Yeah.
You feel like you're there. You feel like you made the effort with them. Meanwhile, your kitchen's a bloody mess. Yeah.
But at least theirs clean and you can
Yeah.
watch it. Yeah, no, definitely. So yeah, those were kind of a few of the trends that we've been loving on social media recently. So if we move on to our main segment of this week's episode, we are going to be discussing some social media tactics to avoid. So just to provide some context for the listeners, obviously there are good social media tactics, there are bad social media tactics, and then there are just those things that you should just completely never do on social. Obviously in terms of, you know, brands and companies that are working within the social space, I think a lot of people might feel that it's necessarily something that they don't know about, or they feel like it could be really beneficial to what they're doing, but a lot of the time some of these things will have, you know, a negative impact on what you're doing, and how your brand is obviously perceived on social media, whether that's them being, you know, outdated or annoying or pointless or just ruining kind of the experience that your user is having in terms of their interactions with your brand. So we will just be discussing some tactics that you should completely stay away from. How about you guys? Any sort of specific tactics from the top of your head? Chloe, anything that you can kind of think of?
Yeah, totally. I think one thing that's really been on my nerves at the moment, and I've seen a few people doing that drives me crazy, is pointless tagging, for lack of a better word. So I guess, you know, social media tagging can be really useful. It's great to tag your friends and things. If you're a brand, you know, tagging influencers that you're working with, maybe another brand that you're collaborating with, or even just tagging a user while you're replying to a comment is super useful and super important. But there gets to a point where you reach what we call the pointless tagging stage. And we actually get this a little bit over on the Giraffe Instagram account. You know, if you're trying to grab the attention of other users or other brands, there is this trend, and we see it in the influencer community, but as well in like the social media, like just general brand and that kind of thing, is just tagging a lot of accounts in your image in hopes to grab their attention. And that might be because you want them to repost your content. If you're an influencer, perhaps we get it on the Giraffe account. We have some social media managers who tag us in things to grab our attention, or maybe to try and get us to follow them. And that's just kind of a big no in my eyes. Not only does it clog up that user's feed, but it does come across as maybe a little bit desperate. It comes across that you're kind of begging for that follow or begging for that interaction, which, you know, if it's a good post, I'm more than happy to, you know, comment and interact with it. But it does kind of, give off a bad brand image if you're a brand who's doing this. But, you know, once this is done effectively, maybe, as I said, you're tagging an influencer that you're working with, or you're tagging a brand that you're collaborating with, that becomes a useful connection, because it generates that engagement. It starts conversation in a good way, as opposed to kind of guilt tripping people into engaging with your post because you've tagged them in it really randomly. So I guess, you know, when it comes down to it, as with all community management, it's important to have a clear message and a clear purpose in mind when you're writing a comment that tags another user. I think the main goal is to have them respond and engage in a conversation, because, you know, as we say in every episode, social media is what? It's social. So yeah, you know, there are good points when it comes to it, but just make sure you don't teeter over into that pointless tagging area.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely think that's something that I found working on like certain clients' social media and different brands and things, that it's also frustrating from like a brand's perspective when you are getting tagged in someone's stuff randomly. And it's just like, it could be something that you're not associated with. It's not an industry that you're involved in, or anything to do with that. And you're just getting these random tags of people being like, yeah, follow for this, or like for this, or and you're just like, no, like it's frustrating, and it brings up your persona in a negative context, and people don't want to see it or get involved with it. So completely.
Do you know what I've seen like that happen recently, but from a non-brand perspective? There's a couple of younger people on Instagram that I follow, like family friends and things like that, and that's something I think they're doing in their posts. So they're putting like a selfie of themselves but tagging all their friends in it to get their friends' attention. So when I think about brands doing that, I just think, oh, like why would you have to do that? If the content you're putting out is good enough and you stand by it, why do you need to tag so many irrelevant other brands in it in order to get attention from it? So
100%. Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. So stay away from pointless tagging, everyone. Don't do it.
And also stay away from non-personalized automated DMs. This is something I hate receiving, is an automated message. This happens a lot on LinkedIn, it happens a lot on Facebook, and you know what, we can all tell that it's an automated message when it comes through. I don't know if you guys agree, but I think it's pretty obvious. So if you're going to send cold DMs, so anything like recruiter email messages on LinkedIn, you need to be aware that probably people are going to ignore them because it's not relevant to them. Especially when you're sort of sending a round robin message. It's the same as sending a round robin email. People probably aren't going to respond to them, and you're probably not going to get the engagement that you're looking for from that. I would also say avoid like thank you for following private messages. Like, you don't need to thank someone for following you. They're following you because you're ultimately going to provide them with valuable content. So avoid doing that. They don't add any value. So if you want a user to engage with you, reach out with something of value to them and make sure that the message you're sending is very personalized and tailored to that individual user. So making sure that you're including their name, like you're including something that is actually of interest to them and you know it's of interest. So whether that be a new follower or an influencer, just making sure that it is really personalized and tailored to them is super important, because as I said previously, if it's not, you're probably not going to get the response that you're looking for.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I think, you know, what you said about like sending a cold DM or a thank you for following private message, I think those types of things are perhaps something to avoid. But you mentioned there like personalizing the message. I think that's okay. I think in terms of like, especially with Instagram, the way the algorithm works is that, you know, sending a DM and building a connection can be really useful in the future, especially if they reply to it, then you are more likely to show up on their feed in the future. But definitely, instead of saying, you know, thank you for following, you could take a look at their interests. For example, if you were a pizza shop and you were based in London, and then the person that followed you, maybe you can take a look on their feed. They also live in London. They've got a few snaps of having Domino's with a friend. You could send them a DM and say, hey, like, thank you so much for following our shop. We see that you're in London and you love pizza, like we'd love to like have you over and give you a 10% discount or something like that. So you're building that meaningful connection, you know, you're giving them a CTA, as it were, like offering them 10% off when they visit, because then you've gained a follower, you've gained a friend, and potentially a customer as well. So yeah, again, it's kind of like with the pointless tagging, there's that line that you don't want to cross, but with everything there is like ways that you can really tailor it and make it acceptable and work in your favor.
I definitely think that those are some great points, specifically as well, just to kind of focus on, you know, if you are reaching out to brands and consumers and people that are interested or following you and interacting with you, making sure that it is genuine. And we obviously touched on that quite deeply in our last podcast episode, where we were chatting about the do's and don'ts of community management, which obviously falls into that as well. So give that a listen if you want to hear some tips on what to do with that too. Any kind of other sort of tactics that you guys feel should be avoided?
For sure. I have one that's kind of relevant to the times we're in. I think if you had asked me this maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, the advice that I would have given would have been completely different. And that's that you really shouldn't, as a brand, be ignoring current or socio-political events. We've seen it been done really well by brands, like, for example, at Joe Biden's inauguration with old mate Bernie and how he was turned into a meme. And of course, that's maybe a little less serious, but in a way, I think it's important for brands to acknowledge current events while still keeping it lighthearted. Like, we don't need to know all of your political opinions, but you know, people like to know that they're buying from brands who are up to date with the news, that maybe do sometimes, you know, have a standpoint. If you want to participate in Pride Month, do something to show that you're an ally. I think that's really important. I think it means a lot to consumers nowadays that, especially Gen Z, they want to kind of align themselves with brands that have the same views and the same morals as them. So yeah, whereas a few years ago, maybe everyone was a little bit shy and, you know, taking a stand or having an opinion. So yeah, so I guess to kind of wrap it up nicely, I think it is important to be open and transparent about things like the charities that you're supporting, if that's something that your business participates in, any causes that you rally for, any volunteering that your employees carry out. All of that's super important stuff, because, you know, showing your genuine values and morals of your company without spamming, you know, with political content, I think can do good things for your brand. So where you can, you should.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that as well. I think also, like, I don't know about you guys, if you found in terms of when a brand doesn't say something about like a current event, it can kind of leave not a sour taste in your mouth, but you're a bit like, like,
a bit skeptical.
Yeah, like, why aren't you saying anything about this? And like, why aren't you getting involved? So I think it's important to kind of like not pick your battles, but also to just pick, you know, if this is something that you're really passionate about as a brand and as a company, to tell people about it and to show them about it, because, you know, it will have some form of impact on how people see your brand and what their relationship with your brand is as well. So definitely completely agree with you on that one, Chloe. 100%.
Yeah, so I think my final tip for today is not using comment bots. It doesn't matter how hard you try to make a comment bots or automated Instagram comments sound authentic, it's just not going to happen. Again, sort of linking back to the automated DMs, it's sort of a similar thing. It doesn't come across as authentic. It doesn't come across like you want to actually build a relationship with your followers or with other Instagram users. You should just make sure that you always have a dedicated social media team or a dedicated community manager who's going on and responding with genuine comments, genuine interactions, and effective community management, essentially. Comment also, just to add to that as well, comment bots aren't really fair on anyone else either, because hashtags that are practically owned by bots just end up messing up engagement rates, and because they just pollute them with empty numbers. So it's just basically not worth doing.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, like, for two reasons. When you see a brand comment when it's obviously a bot, like, it's so transparent, and I guess you need to think about what that is doing for you. You're not generating any meaningful engagement out of it. Like, if I see bots commenting on my account, I either delete them or I just don't engage with them, because it's not a real person behind it. They're mainly just commenting emojis. Like, it's nothing to exchange with. So I think that's super important. Not only like they don't really do anything for you, but if you don't have enough time to be commenting yourself, maybe it is time to look into hiring like a community manager, a social media manager. There are affordable options. You know, you can go to an agency, a freelancer, whatever you like. But yeah, I think also it has a negative effect on the people that you're commenting on, especially if that's like an influencer profile, because when brands are looking to work with influencers, the first thing that we do check is those vanity metrics like likes and comments. And if you can see that a bunch of comments on that user's account are from bots, whether they've, you know, put that forward or if it's because your brand, you know, is doing a lazy interaction that way, it also has an effect on them. And it, you know, brands may not want to work with them because that's the type of comment they're receiving, whether they've had anything to do with it or not. So definitely, I think community management is so important, but if you don't have time to do it, please don't turn to comment bots. Definitely invest in either some more time for you to do it or invest in some money to hire someone to do it for you.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think, yeah, just all of those tips were really great. So thank you for sharing those, guys. I think what we can probably take from this mainly is just to ensure that you're bringing value to your social media and, you know, not trying to use like quick and easy tactics to kind of solve maybe an issue that you're facing, or like Chloe said, you don't have time to necessarily do it. So I think it's important to just invest in creating that value and ensuring that you're building those relationships and that they're genuine. So yeah, thank you for those. Those were some really great tips.
It's like my mum used to say, do it the right way, not the easy way.
Yeah, there we go.
Thank you, Mum.
Shout out to Chloe's mom. So we will be now diving into our top social media news story of the week, which is that Twitter is now releasing a new e-commerce feature. Another new feature from Twitter, which is always great to hear about. We love hearing about it. So they're basically introducing a shop feature similar to how Facebook and Instagram have done it, where you can obviously, link products, tag products, and then people can just shop directly from your brand's Twitter page and make purchases and anything in terms of that. So yeah, I don't know how I'm feeling about this one.
Yeah, we were talking about this earlier, actually, and I just, no. Do you know what? I just feel like Twitter, I don't want to say Twitter needs to give up. Twitter is just updating itself at rapid speed, particularly recently. It's just coming out with new things and it's retracting them. For example, Twitter stories, they didn't take off, so now they're taking them away. Because I think they need to sort of find their niche again. Like, the thing about Twitter was that it was, the thing that I loved about Twitter when I first got it was like the short form, pieces of copy that people would put out. And, for me, it was like quick, flick through it, like some things, retweet some things, tweet my own things. And that was what was fun about it. And now I just feel like some of these updates that are coming in and taking after other platforms is just, I know we've said this word so much today, but it's taking away like its authenticity almost, and it's making it a platform that I don't enjoy as much anymore.
I agree. I think Twitter has kind of gone down this road of gamification, and it hasn't always worked from them. I think the great thing about Twitter when it came out was that it was so different from everything else on the playing field, and it seems like over recent years they've kind of tried to take successful bits and pieces from other platforms and morph it into their own, and it just hasn't worked because that's not what Twitter was made for, and that's not why people love Twitter. I do have to disagree though. I'm not mad about Twitter shopping. I'm a big fan of any social media platform that adds shopping into their features. The only thing I don't love is when they try and force it down your necks. Cough, Instagram. Give us back the home button that you've replaced with the shop button. But I just think it's super useful. There's nothing worse than, you see something, maybe it is on Twitter because everyone else has the shopping feature, but you see a product on Twitter and then you have to, find that brand, then go to the brand's website, then search for the product, and then go into the, add to cart, go to the confirmation page, etc. I think we were talking about this in an episode a few weeks ago. Like, it just makes the user experience so much easier, and the easier the better. I do think, Twitter has had some failures in the past, but I can't really see this going wrong. I think it's something that most brands are going to use, even like creators and small businesses are going to use it, and I just can't see it going wrong.
Yeah. I'm a bit on the fence about it, I think. I can definitely kind of see your point, Chloe, in terms of, it just makes sense to integrate it into the platform. But then again, I can also see where Laura's coming from in a sense. It's like, come on, Twitter, like another thing that we're trying out, really?
Give it 6 months.
Yeah, like we need some time. We need a break. Like we just got over the stories and like now you're bringing out an e-commerce feature. Like what's going to happen next? It's too much. But yeah, I think it will be interesting to kind of see how they roll it out as well. Because obviously, I mean, Instagram shop was very much like a big like thing and they rolled it out quite well, I feel. And obviously Facebook, I don't know about you guys, but I actually didn't know that Facebook shop existed. Like I didn't feel like there was a massive like hoo-ha about the Facebook shop being a thing until I actually was working on Facebook and I was like, oh, like you can shop on Facebook? What? Like, oh, okay. So yeah, it'll be interesting to just see how they roll it out. But I definitely think that even though they may be like jumping on the bandwagon and it's not necessarily maybe innovative in that sense, it is just, you know, one of those things that will just make the user experience and things so much easier for Twitter users that are wanting to purchase things and who, like you said, see things online and, you know, have that interest of like, oh, where can I get that product? Like, it will just make that so much easier. So yeah, go on Twitter. You'll ace it, hopefully. Fingers crossed. Hopefully we're not talking in a few weeks' time saying Twitter's retracted their e-commerce feature. It's not happening anymore. Like it's gone. So this week's DM is focused all around Facebook. And it's a very short and sweet DM, which I feel like opens a massive can of worms and a huge conversation. But it just reads, is Facebook still relevant? That's the question. So yeah, I don't know about your guys' thoughts on this. I feel like there's a very mixed kind of bag in terms of whether Facebook is still relevant. But yeah, Laura, why don't you take it away?
See, I feel like the answer to this is yes and no. Because like, whilst like I don't actively use Facebook probably as much as I know other people do, like I can't imagine a world without Facebook. So to me that still kind of makes it relevant. And actually, like, having done like lots of work on Facebook for various different clients and seeing like the importance of Facebook and even, you know, Facebook ads themselves and how well they do and the results that Facebook ads can bring in, I think Facebook is still relevant. I think it's going to be relevant for a long way to come, I would say. I think from a like personal user perspective, it's not as relevant to me anymore. I don't feel the need to tell people how I'm feeling anymore, or what I've had for dinner or what I did that day. But definitely from a brand's perspective, I think it's still, you know, highly relevant.
Definitely. I was actually having a chat to one of my clients yesterday about this because they've been thinking about moving away from Facebook and focusing on something else purely because they're not sure if their target audience is using that platform. But I just had to say to them, like, when you Google a brand, when you're looking for a brand, you know, aside from the website, the first thing you typically go to, maybe it is Instagram, but if they don't have a presence on Facebook, I don't know what it is. I just immediately go sketchy.
Yeah,
like, that's sketchy.
Don't trust it.
So I think whilst it is super important to be active across as many platforms as you can, but yeah, you've definitely got to choose, you know, where your audience is and what's going to be most relevant to your brand. But I think the first one you set up, it's got to be Facebook. You know, it's everything in one. You can link your website there, you can run your ads there, you can set up a shop. That's where people leave reviews more than they would maybe on Google. And yeah, I just think, you know, if a brand, depending on what their product or service is, doesn't have an Instagram account, that's fine with me. I can totally excuse that. But if they don't have a Facebook, it does kind of give us a bad impression. And I'm not sure what that is. So I think, yeah, maybe from a user perspective, Facebook isn't as relevant as it once was for personal use, but absolutely for brands. I think, you know, baseline 1 post a week. You know, you don't have to be pouring all your budget in there, you know, really picking your brains about innovative posting. But just let us know what's going on. Keep us informed. Keep us up to date. Have a link. Have the opening hours. And yeah, you've sold me.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you guys. I think it's definitely relevant but not relevant in that sense. But 100% with brands. I mean, if I have to look at kind of the clients that I work with, probably 90% of them are still using Facebook, and they see like a success rate on there in terms of, you know, the ads we're running or, you know, the things that we're putting out there. It might not necessarily be as, I want to say, modern as Instagram. You know, I picture Facebook as an old lady who's just like sitting, if she had to be a person, it would just be this old lady sitting in her house, like just on a little computer, you know, living a life. But
she does still have embedded links,
which
Instagram does still not have. So,
so she's still winning in that sense. But yeah, like I definitely think that there is still so much relevance in terms of, like you said, with brands and stuff. I just wish that Facebook Memories never existed, because Tyler from 9 years ago should just not even be reminded of all those status updates of how I'm feeling and what I'm doing. I would like to erase that forever. So Facebook, if you're listening, can you make that a feature, please? But yeah, I definitely think from a brand perspective, it's 100% still super, super relevant, and something that brands should still continue to invest in. But like you said, maybe not all your budget, but just some of it. So that was our top DM for this week. Hopefully we answered your question. And if you'd like to be featured in next week's episode, then make sure you slide into our DMs over on our Instagram page at GiraffeSM. Well, that's all we've got time for today. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, or follow us if you're listening on Spotify. We'd love to hear what you thought about today's episode, so make sure you reach out on social media and let us know your thoughts. We've been Giraffe Social Media. You've been amazing. We'll see you next time.